Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming out for this. I heard so many smart presentations today that I thought maybe it was time for a change of pace. Yeah, okay, maybe. Here we are. The evolution of IRs. This is a brief history. Mainly, and I have to apologize. I know this is an international conference, and I tried my best to reflect that, but please be aware that I have mostly been working with my head down at my own desk, in my own little corner, so I'm not really as cosmopolitan as I would like to be. What's an IR? Just first of all, what do we consider an IR? Institutionally branded, cross-disciplinary, full text, not just links, free public access, no memberships here, and connected to the World Wide Web through HTML, HTTP, and URL. Evolution, what is evolution? The theory of evolution has two parts. The first, random, spontaneous mutations, and then environmental selection. I'm going to talk a little bit about the environment, starting with precursors and preconditions. I trace this back to Michael Hart and Project Gutenberg, who started in 1971 in Chicago. Now, at that point, he was building a text archive of free public text. At that point, it was on reel-to-reel in EPSIDEC, and you could share it with another computer center. That was it. I'm going to skip 10 years to the IBM PC with Microsoft software. I had one of those with two floppies, the double-side floppies too. And then the next year, Adobe was founded by refugees from Xerox, not far from here in Palo Alto. Windows came along the next year, Windows 1, which didn't do very much, but it was followed up by Windows 2.0 4 years later. Then we get to where the groundwork really began in the 90s with the CNI, the Coalition for Networked Information. I mention a lot of these organizations because they were very important in the sharing of information and our seeing what other people was doing was very important for me anyway. 1991, the World Wide Web developed at CERN was opened up to the public. And that year also Archive was founded by high-energy physicists from Cornell and Los Alamos, the same people that gave us the bomb. 1993, the PDF format was released by Adobe. My first reaction at that time was, so what? But here 30 years later, we're still using it. Also that year, JISC was established in Great Britain. And the online books page was started by John Mark Åkerblom, who's a very important person in my development, at least. He started it at Carnegie Mellon and moved it later to Penn. 94, we had Stephen Harnod's subversive proposal, which was that scholars should post copies of their papers online on their websites. That was basically it. And he had made a similar suggestion a couple of years before, but he wrote this in an article in a peer-reviewed journal. 94, JSTOR was founded. Also, we had the first, really, of the second-generation browsers, Netscape Navigator, followed and imitated the following year by Windows. Microsoft is always good at imitating. And then in 95, the Digital Library Federation, another important organization. The Internet Archive was founded in 1996. Google was founded by Stanford graduate students. Cielo was established in Brazil in 98. Spark was founded by ARL, the Association of Research Libraries. It's since gone independent. And in 1999, the Berkeley Electronic Press was founded. Let's give them a hand. Yes, hooray. In the 90s in general, that's when the electronic distribution of subscription journals became common. Acquisitions budgets shifted from buying monographs to leasing online journal subscriptions. Libraries were increasingly concerned about the serials crisis. Excuse me, I can't do that with my microphone. And in open access and institutional repositories were introduced as ways to address that situation. Interlibrary loan programs flourished once things became electronic. And the downside of that was it gave academic insiders access to almost everything, which I later encountered scholars who said, why would I want to put my stuff in the repository? Anyone who needs it can get it anyway. The internet economy boomed, and dot-com ventures attracted large capital. There was a bust a few years later, but what remained was this built-out infrastructure that really became very important. Let's see. Oh, here we are. And then things really began in the 2000s. In 2000, ePrints, developed at Southampton University, was released, the first IR software. Biomed Central, a very early open access journal, was founded. The next year, Wikipedia was launched, as was Digital Commons, released by B Press, distributed at that time by ProQuest. And then the OAI PMH protocol version that allowed us to share metadata was promulgated, the first version. And ROR, the Registry of Open Access Repositories, was founded. The first to register was the Norway Science and Technical University, which still exists and has over 100,000 items. In 2002, Raim Crow published the case for IRs, a Spark position paper. MIT released DSpace. The Public Knowledge Project released OJS. Creative Commons was founded by Lawrence Lessig. Sherpa was founded at University of Nottingham. Redalyc was started in Mexico City. And there was the Budapest Open Access Initiative, which was sponsored by the George Soros Foundation. And Mozilla Firefox, an open source browser, was introduced. The following year, Clifford Lynch from CNI published IR's Essential Infrastructure, so now we're essential, which was great. The DOAJ was founded. The Public Library of Science was founded. Countermetrics was founded in England. Fedora was released by Cornell and the University of Virginia. The following year, Google Scholar was released, 2004. And in 2005, Nebraska adopted the Digital Commons, and other early adapters at that time included University of Massachusetts at Amherst with Marilyn Billings, and the University of Wollongong, where Michael Organ was the IR manager. In 2005, YouTube was founded. We've used YouTube for our IR at times. It was bought by Google almost immediately. Spark issued their author addendum for what it was worth. The first Open Repositories International Conference was held in Sydney. Atmire launched in Belgium. The Apple iPhone was introduced, dragging us all into the era of mobile. The Driver Project in Europe, which was to network the various IRs there, was founded. That would eventually lead to the Confederation of Open Access Repositories. And ProQuest's distribution of Digital Commons came to an end. This was good for us because it put us in direct contact with the Digital Commons people themselves. Instead of having to work through ProQuest, we could work with them directly, which has been a wonderful situation. Ellie was our first customer service rep. Yeah. All right. Okay, 2008, big year for that. The first Spark Repositories Conference was held. My dean, Joan Giesecke, and I spoke. She graciously granted me half of her time. Harvard, that's the year that Harvard established their Office of Scholarly Communications, and they mandated OA faculty deposits. They did not have an IR at that time, but they established one fairly soon afterwards. Congress required the PubMed Central deposit of NIH-funded articles. This was a big boost to IRs to take effect in 2010. And then Cambridge, Oxford, and Sage sued the Georgia State University over online reserve materials. And the scholarly kitchen blog of the Society for Scholarly Publishing was started. Also in 2008, Omeka was developed at George Mason University. Hydra, which later became Samvera, and Haiku was developed at Stanford, Hull, University of Virginia, and Fedora. GitHub was founded in San Francisco. ResearchGate was founded with a funding from Bill Gates, Goldman Sachs, and the Wellcome Trust. And Academia EDU was founded by a private guy, Richard Price. And Ubiquity Press was founded in London. Also, big year, 2008. The Chrome browser was released. Springer acquired Biomed Central. And nobody said anything. Biomed, and then they launched a thing called Open Repositories, a platform. The Open Access Scholarly Publishing Association was formed with not-for-profit as well as commercial and university press publishers. DSpace and Fedora merged to form DuraSpace, and Lyricist was founded in Atlanta. In the 2000 to 2010, in that decade, internet transmission speeds increased 100-fold. This had a massive impact on our distribution of our materials over the internet. And then in the 2010s, we saw an expansion, and we also saw a rise of an interest in metrics. Islandora was developed at Prince Edward Island University. The Open Air project in Europe was initiated. Sci-Hub was founded in Kazakhstan by Alexandria Elbakian. I still believe this was a KGB operation. COAPI, the Coalition of Open Access Policy Institutions, was founded at the University of Kansas. Figshare was launched and almost immediately bought by Springer. Plum Analytics was founded in Philadelphia. It was eventually purchased by Elsevier. And Spark changed their orientation somewhat and began to promote open access via APC funding and CC licenses. Green OA was no longer the route that they were promoting, which annoyed me. 2012, Georgia State won their initial decision, but it went into appeal, and it was only almost 10 years later before it was finally decided. They still won, but they didn't get to collect their expenses. The JLSC, Journal of Librarianship and Scholarly Communication, was founded by Isaac Gilman and Marisa Ramirez, two Digital Commons All-Stars, and was hosted for a long time by the Digital Commons. IRIS UK, which was a program of JISC, began to collect and distribute repository statistics. The Digital Commons Great Lakes Users Group, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, held their first meeting. Altmetrics was founded. Zenodo was launched by CERN. And Digital Commons introduced the readership map. And what a big impact that had. I mean, if you know, before we could see a list of, country categories. And that was exciting. But to actually see them on the map and to see it interactive, and I've had faculty members complain that it's just too easy to waste 20 minutes watching that, Still in the 2010s, we had the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, which is global but mainly European. The Authors Guild versus Google decision, right? The Google that allowed for Google Books. It's, transformative use is not infringement. OADOI, which later became Unpaywall, was founded in Vancouver. Heather Piawar and a co-founder, whose name I can't recall. Atmeyer acquired Open Repository from Springer. Ref 2021 in the UK began to require OA deposit of all funded research, or at least of all government-funded research. SMRC, the first Southern Mississippi IR conference, was a great conference if you ever get an opportunity, the first one. And then in 2017, Elsevier acquired Digital Commons. In 2018, the Brexit movement urged those libraries to leave Digital Commons. Those of us who remained experienced a certain degree of negativity, but we're still here. Microsoft acquired GitHub. The European Coalition S released Plan S to require OA deposit by EU-funded research by 2021. Duraspace merged with Lyrasis. I realized doing this why I could never keep up with all these things. It's all the mergers and acquisitions. Digital Commons added streaming, which was really a great thing. And the first Northeast Institutional Repository Day was held in Boston. In the 2020s, really the first thing that happened was COVID-19, which pandemic closed all campuses. IRs responded with recorded instruction and digital delivery. Whose traffic went up during COVID? Everybody's. Medical IRs and Library Symposium, the first one of those was held. The first Digital Commons North American Conference was held. So I did have a picture of Snowy. 2022, the OSTP memo now requires OA deposit of all federal funded research by 2025. So they're all panicking on what they're going to do about this right now. And then also De Gruyter acquired Ubiquity Press, if you can keep up with all these. Okay, that's the end of my timeline. But I'm just going to say, look at the growth. In 2004, there were 372 repositories in the registry. In 2024, there are 5,600, of which almost 4,000 are departmental or institutional repositories. 705 of them are in the Digital Commons network. I like this graph. It looks like the back end of a stegosaurus. These are the features that led to the expansion and the appeal and the coverage of IRs. Usage reporting, depositor contact, geolocation, streaming video, exhibits presentation, journal and book publishing, harvesting, and search engine optimization. None of these were part of the original conception. These were things that were added along the way. And this is one example of what I call evolution. You know, we had an original conception is a passive archive where expert faculty researchers post papers for other expert faculty researchers. And this has grown into a flexible multi-purpose platform for collecting, publishing, promoting, providing metrics on institutional output to an international, non-specialist public audience. This frog has evolved into a prince. So how do you transform a frog into a prince? Well, you do that by kissing it, right? Now, there were naysayers and hesitation along the way. And I'm not going to go through all the naysaying because you've probably heard it, you know. Copyright, plagiarism, all these things. But I will say that some of the toughest resistance I encountered along the way was from librarians. And there was so much focus on policies and restrictions and regulations that I think this left a lot of IR managers with a very narrow circle of what they could do. And I think that this delayed the implementation process. And I felt it was treating the IR as a collection, something that should have a collection policy. In my view, that was gatekeeping. And that was not the business we were in. We're in the collecting business, not the keeping out business. Digital Commons folks, they do give me too much credit. Don't believe most of what you hear. But we did do a different approach. We pursued content aggressively, and we shared the metrics. That was very important. Our dean was well placed, and she helped carry the message. Like I said, we spoke at the repositories meeting, and I followed up all around the country for these people, and I did presentations in Chicago, Los Angeles, Anaheim, Philadelphia. And the point of my presentations and all these was like, look how exciting this is. Look how successful this is to be publishing and distributing and building scholarly content. So I don't know if it had an effect or not, but we're all still here. At least I didn't kill the movement. There were some things that I had a hand in, and I do want credit for these, all right? And one of them is the download button. Initially, you had to click on the file name if you wanted to get the file. And there was a redesign or an upgrade. And the other thing is you didn't know what you were going to get. You might just jump to another HTML page, or you might get a download. And our conversion rates at that point ran around 50%. And I said, well, it needs to be clear it's a download. In fact, you need a damn button. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who said this, but it did happen. And our present conversion rate with the button is now closer to 85%. So I still, visit some repositories, and I have to, now what do I click here to get the file, So my hope is they put a download button on my gravestone. Another thing was the dear author messages, right? And because this is a sensitive thing. You're sending an email to a faculty member who probably gets dozens, if not hundreds of emails, and it says, click this link, we promise you'll love it. How do you establish that relationship that, this is a good faith thing and we have stuff and we're not trying to trick you and all. So we went through various things, and I'm quite happy with what there is now. That's my latest download well, not my latest, that was August. August is a down month. My September one's a little better. And then, okay, IRs and open access. IRs, they were conceived as, right, like I said, experts sharing peer-reviewed publications with other experts. And this is crowdsourcing by engaged authors to, advance open access, reform scholarly publishing. And one of the rationales was that, yes, delivering those results sooner will expedite scientific progress. And another was, yes, funded research, has obligations to the public. We paid for it once, and those are all right. But the problem was that assembling these materials, whose rights were closely held by traditional publishers, well, it just wasn't easy. It wasn't straightforward. So open access advocacy shifted to other means, and they began to promote APC funding, gold OA journals, transitional agreements. Heather announced at the last conference I attended that, if it's not open access if it's not CC BY or equivalent. And I just thought, well, you just trashed half of what we were doing. You just kicked us out of the movement. So, but whatever. There was a progression of strategies recommended. First of all, if you build it, they will come. And then if you build it and make it seem fun, if you build it and make it required. Ultimately, it came down to if you build it and you make it required and you pay for the APCs, well, then it doesn't really matter if they come or not because it's already open access. So, our strategy is if you build it and put their stuff there, they will come back. Yeah, I wanted to include this. You know, I got a lot of expert advice. And this is a slide that I did at a repository rant at Open Repositories in Helsinki 10 years ago. And, you know, I don't think any of these things are bad, but I think they're bad as requirements. I think they're bad as requiring 100% for this. And I can go through that and explain each one, but I don't have that much time. I was reprimanded by my department head for saying this at a conference, and they put a letter in my file. My response was, well, I've been kicked out of better places than this. What didn't happen in the IR? It's not a social media site. You hear that, ResearchGate? It's not a social media site. And commenting is not allowed. Thank goodness. What did happen was we got integrated into academic processes. And this was just key. Student work, archives, non-traditional materials. I hear that many of you are now depositing podcasts and things like that. I think that's great. Thesis and dissertation deposit, online course materials, institutional publishing. None of these were envisioned in the original Frog version. So here, let's get back to evolution again. All right, 66 million years ago, a comet smashed into the Yucatan Peninsula, and the ensuing climate effects wiped out 75% of all species of plants and animals on Earth. At that time, the only mammals were small insectivores. Now, within a short time, evolutionarily speaking, about 30 million years, the mammalian line produced flying, swimming, climbing, galloping, bats, whales, horses, etc., herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, everything. It radiated out into all these different species because the space was there. So here's my analogy. All right? Oh, I'm getting a laugh. Oh, thank you, Permita. All right? Here's my analogy. Is over the past 30 years, the personal computer and the World Wide Web, they collided with our society. And they set off this information climate change. And it's opened new environments for innovation and creativity. IRs were conceived for a specific end, but they've radiated into multiple uses and applications. Evolutionary biologists use the term functional diversity. And I think that's what we see in IRs, functional diversity. No two IRs are alike. There are 4,000 institutions. Each one of them is platforming local content to an information-seeking world. Now, what do I mean by all this? Each IR is its own species, sui generis. IRs provide an on-ramp to the internet with metrics, and we offer more than information. We offer knowledge. We can each be our own kind of publisher, and we can take chances. But, yeah, I know, I'm telling you to take chances. There's a letter in my file somewhere. It says, you took too many chances. Find ways to do what your depositors need and survive. Surviving is very important. But, I mean, you may say, look, it's no longer this new, fresh feel like it was back then, okay, boomer. But what I say is that it's always new at the edges. So look at the advantages that you have now. You have proven infrastructure. You have academic recognition. I mean, the ads I see for scholarly communication librarian and you know, it's recognized. You have remote work. If ever anything was wonderful for remote work, it's IR management. You have an activity that the faculty appreciate and it brings good notice to your institution. And you have many models of success. Just look around. IRs now are a status symbol. look who has one, you know? Harvard, MIT, Michigan, California, Illinois. But those places, that's not where the action is, in my view. Those are old, and they're traditional, and they're last year's model. What's exciting are the new uses, the innovative applications introduced by the younger, fresher practitioners. I am so happy to see so many young faces here. Sorry, Roger. Or Todd. So what now is we have an unprecedented opportunity to develop, evolve, and flourish. Go out and do something marvelous. Populate the digital environment with new species. Don't be held back by traditional requirements from a previous era. You don't have to do it the recommended way. You do have to love your depositors, you have to love your audience, and you need to love your platform. Use it to do something amazing. It will make a difference, I promise you that. Here's some classic articles. I included 3 of mine. Please cite them. I need help on my H-index. And thank you. Oh, and the secret is that the frog was a prince the whole time. You know, we just didn't see it. Thank you.
That was a great talk. Thank you for the overview and walkthrough. The question, I'm here. So the question I have is, I think we have many princesses, or princes, I guess. The question is, how about sustainability of these repositories for the long haul? That's a huge question that we all have as funders, and I'm from the NIH. As a funder, we're struggling with how do we fund these for the long haul, and how do we optimize resources across. So what insights do you have, or what advice do you have to kind of optimize these resources?
This is a funding question about institutional funding of the IRs. Well, I think we have to make a case to the university that this is a valuable and essential thing. It brings good notice to the university. At our institution, we discovered that our IR was the most downloaded site on the whole domain. And I mean, it's a fight, and you got to, get in there and wrestle for your funding. You've got to, make sure that I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Soon after I retired, my successor went to the front page of our repository and put a picture of the library. Now, I would never have done that, because to me, the repository was a global thing. And I was interested in, our users in Kyrgyzstan and Philippines and all. But it was very smart what she did, and having seen it, I realized it was a good thing, because what it did is that it made the thing, it gave ownership of it to our university administration. And this is their thing now. And it's something that they need to support, and we need their patriotism, if you want to call it that, to be, to be part of. Let's keep this going. This carries, in our case, this carries Nebraska content from pole to pole. We get 7 million downloads globally, and over half of them are international, and it's a recruitment source for both faculty and students. So I think we have to keep making that argument. And I think we have to invent new ways to get people involved. The student involvement is key anymore. That was never part of the original plan, but it's very much something that administrators, want to see, because they want that enrollment number. So I don't know. I'm a great fan of the NIH. I think, PubMed Central has been a huge boost, for what we're doing. And, so thank you for your question. Thank you for your organization's, support of this movement.
Well, my question's kind of a plant, but I had asked the opening panel what was the collection that surprised them the most in the evolution of the IR, and I don't know with your. So, what can you tell us? What was your favorite, or what was your most surprising collection, and in terms of the impact that it might have had?
My most surprising one is probably the tractor test reports. We have a little on our East Campus. It's where the ag school is. There's this Quonset hut with all this old farm equipment in it, and a bunch of guys that just hang around there. But what happened was back in 2019, some fast-talking East Coast salesman sold some honest Nebraska farmer a no-good tractor. And he went and he complained to his legislature, and the legislature passed a bill that all tractors sold in Nebraska had to be tested by the Ag Engineering Department. So they have a little track and all that, and they began to do these and to publish the tractor test reports. And I got a call from Jeremy, who was their, I don't know, administrator at one point. He was just a grad student. And I went over there, and they had this room full of file cabinets with all the test reports going back to 1918. And they had a scanner, and they had volunteers. So I showed them how to do it. And I didn't upload any of these. I did have to go and look for, graphics and set up the thing. But they began to upload them, and they uploaded about 4,500 of them. And it's just nuts. I mean, Saad was just mentioning it as being, like it's beating up the track. The reason is that I can guarantee you within 10 miles of here, somebody is restoring an old tractor. And they want to know the specs on it. They want to know, all they can about it. And, this just proved to be this delightful thing that just happened because I was willing to go make the visit and to show them how to do it. And I walked away thinking, well, at least I got out of my office for the afternoon. And then it just began to go. So that's been my most surprising one. And that happened 17 years ago. So that's my story. Thank you. Thank you very much.